information available for you all. There we go. Look how everybody fooling up. Boy, we looking good, baby. We looking good. We looking good. I hope you guys got your coffee. Let's go. Let's go ahead and go listen to what they have to say.
Ben, the reason he's jumping on it this time is because this is usually about the time he's done with getting off the golf course.
Shout out to 105.3
That's his
The Fan.
daily routine, tearing it up. And joining us now on the buyersafety.com hotline. Romo. Tony Romo joining us right now on the Ben and Skin Show. Ow. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Man, we're doing great. It's always so much fun to hear from you. We miss you, man. And hey, it's a great time to be joined by you because you are coming off a big win on the golf course back to back. You've won that same tournament now back-to-back years, right?
Back-to-back, huh?
Well, that's why I'm calling in, because I have time to talk about how good I am.
Hey, I was going to do that no matter what. You can count on that for sure. But, hey, so you're swinging the clubs pretty good right now. How are you feeling out on the course?
How you feeling,
good.
Romo?
I think a little bit just started last year, about a year and a half ago, really trying to make it almost a routine, systematic in nature, not unlike football, where it's like you want to be good at something. You got to wake up and do it, and just kind of almost like figure out some of the subtlety, the nuance of the game, what makes players really good, and try and get around them, find a blueprint, and then go attack it and see how good you can be. So it's been a fun improvement year for me, I guess you could say.
I don't want to wear you down with mechanics questions, but I was so fascinated, Tony, in reading, I guess it was right before the Byron Nelson maybe, about your grip on putting and how – you have a kind of an unconventional grip and it works for you. I'm curious how long you've used that, how you arrived at that, and how that's working for you.
Yeah, I watched Happy Gilmore, and it looked like he putted pretty good. No, I think the reality was each time I played in an event, that really is, important to you. I guess you could say every tournament you want to score well and play good, but a lot of them I use for almost like you're practicing what you're going to take. You're going to go into the tournament. There's really two ways to play in the tournament.
Right.
So it's like practice in football. During practice, you can just do whatever's possible to complete this pass, or you're working on your own technique to improve, and you might miss a pass. Now, in a football game, you would never do that. It's strictly about moving the ball, getting in the end zone, trying to win the game. With golf, it's similar, but some tournaments you're trying to improve while you're trying to take the next steps. You need to test these things out under pressure. And some of the bigger tournaments where I was more about getting the ball in the hole, on some of those, I felt like you learn a lot, and you kind of get yourself in a position to where you're going to not really try new things. Just, this is who I am right now, accept that, get the ball in the hole.
What's up,
and
Ivan?
the putting style at that time, which
on the
I'm actually
Facebook,
not
Marvin,
using
shout
anymore,
out to you all,
the
man. It's on the
two-handed grip.
Facebook
I'm actually
panel.
back to conventional short putting. But at that time, I need.
All right, so he's pretty much talking about the mechanics of football as it relates to golf or what have you. What I'm going to do, because I'm pressed for time, is I didn't timestamp it. Unfortunately, I just had to rush this all together. I wanted to get out the information about him talking about the Cowboys' offense or what have you, and how changes occur, maybe a better suit for us. So I'm going to try to fast forward through this interview. If you want to catch the full interview, shout out to 105.3 The Fan. It's Ben and Skin. They do an excellent job of breaking the ice. The icebreaker was just like right on point. Get Romo comfortable. As you guys can see, he's very comfortable talking to those guys. And then, of course, I don't think Romo ever been shy of anything. Let me see if I can fast forward so we can get to the meat and potatoes of everything. If that's okay with you all, right?
But I needed to go.
Let me see if I can fast forward. So you might hear a little.
Hey, are you about the same point?
Okay.
No, I've improved a lot. I think for me, like, some of my weaknesses were really apparent. They never
still talking about golf. Give me a few seconds. Let me find that.
Know that you were constantly tweaking your throwing motion, your throwing mechanics.
Here we go. That's okay. We fast forwarding, baby.
Talking to Tony Romo here on the Ben and Skin Show, 105.3 The Fan. I'm curious about this aspect of it because a lot of guys listening right now play golf on the weekends. They don't have the time to play every single day. But if you haven't grown up playing golf and then you get into it later in life, there's a lot of things happening mechanically. Well, I know that you were constantly tweaking your throwing motion and your throwing mechanics and constantly trying to improve that. And obviously, as a professional athlete, you're attuned to that and can feel certain things. So, like, when you would, let's say your throwing motion from 2012 to 2015 changes, and I'm assuming when you're out on the field, you can feel the differences in those mechanics. As you're going through this process, are you immediately feeling the mechanic difference, like in your hips, for example, or your rotation? It's because when you're hitting a golf ball, there's a lot of different things that you can think about. Are you feeling all those things happening as they're happening, or do you have specific things you got to focus on?
Well, the idea is not to get, and I tell this to kids back when I was playing football. For a kid, it's like everyone, you want to be Tom Brady at a young age. So it's like, no, the idea is there's steps that you have to take each year, each month, each day. And if you don't have a plan before you show up that day, it's going to be very difficult to improve just based on feelings and just being like, oh, I feel pretty good, let's do this today. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be a blueprint, something that you're like really trying to do. And I call it like a deliberate practice. In some ways it's probably boring to people. I enjoy the heck out of that because it's like I'm trying to find the subtlety. What are the real little things that can actually make it so you're freed up? The idea is not to think. It's to just be able to just, like I talked about the motor pattern, same thing with the throwing motion.
Right.
When you're getting ready to throw a football, when you're changing your throwing motion, like I did when I was younger, as I got older, and finally I felt like, I could just take 2 weeks off and throw the football the exact same way. That was insane for me when I was younger. If I took a day off, I'd feel like I was 100 days behind where I was before. And so once you get the right technique, though, it just becomes muscle memory. And then you don't have to think as much. Your body just reacts that way, and then you're able to only think about one thing. And the goal is to work so hard that you can change these patterns that you've already built up to make them, in a position to be consistent day in, day out, where I don't even think of that anymore. It's just, I'm just thinking now strictly about this only instead of 4, 5, 6 things like I think everybody does, including me when I was younger. The older I get, it's like we're going to attack this one thing. We're going to get that right. We're going to get that right on video. We're going to get that right regardless of the shot. I'll sacrifice short-term gain all the time to constantly be going in the direction where it's going to get you one day.
That's
This information there, man, for everybody to understand. Look, he's talking about muscle memory and then the time when you put in practice. Being able, the best player that I can ever bring this up about is Michael Jordan. You guys remember Michael Jordan closed his eyes to shoot that free throw? You guys remember that? I wish I could have a highlight board to just go show you guys Michael Jordan was able to close his eyes and still shoot the free throw. Muscle memory is everything. When we saw Tony Romo in 2013 and 14 and some parts of 15 before he got injured, the guy was on point. And if you look at the documentary that he had on, I believe, the Football Life, and he was talking about all of the series of time of him practicing, working on his craft. I think that these players are getting so great towards the latter parts of their careers, like your John Elways of the world, and if you look at Tom Brady's of the world, even Brett Favre, and then if you add in what Tony Romo and I can say Peyton Manning as well, those guys towards the latter parts of their careers, man, and then Tom Brady's still living the funk, just unstoppable because now they know for sure. How you can't throw them a defense that they did not see before, right? You can't just throw them anything because they be able to sniff that stuff out. And that's what Tony Romo is saying. He practiced so much that it become muscle memory. Now, in his early years of careers, if he missed one day, it's hard for him to get back to that level. And I do know, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because it's going to be hard for me to find that segment on this long interview. It's like 40 minutes out there on the Ben and Skin show. He was talking about the mechanics and footwork. Everybody's looking at Dak Prescott's footwork. But no, it's more so to do with his angles of his arm too. So those are things that you have to look at. But let me see if I can find, I'm going to scheme through this and see if I can find when he was talking on those.
Have you had any thoughts on him at all?
I actually hadn't heard those comments. Like the tunnel, the little bubble I live in.
Yeah.
Let's see, right here. Here we go.
Wanted to be a broadcaster. Well, I always see the fan, and look, we're Romo defenders, and I know you've got to be you have to be bulletproof when you're the quarterback of America's team, and there's always going to be haters and criticism, that type of stuff. But you're not even playing, and your name pops up every once in a while. And I don't know if you saw this or not. I got to ask you about it. But Peyton Manning the other day, you were in the news because Peyton Manning swerved over 8 lanes of traffic to run you over while you were changing a tire out on the side of the road. He said, I saw where Tony Romo said that he always knew he wanted to be a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a football player. That's all I knew. I was all in on that job. I didn't think about anything else while I was playing, and I think that's a good way to be. I think you've got to be all in on what you're doing. I've personally never seen anybody more all in on what they're doing than you as a football player. So, but some people heard that, and maybe people are reading into it too much, saying, wait a second, is he saying that Romo was sitting there in the pocket thinking about being a broadcaster? What is he saying there? So I wanted to know if you heard those comments and if you had any thoughts on them at all.
I actually hadn't heard those comments, like the tunnel, the little bubble I live in.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, I mean, that's something I never actually said, so that would be the first flaw.
Wow.
I think
he called him back
I didn't think
out.
about being a broadcaster until I was contemplating retiring. And so at that point, then you're going to start to think about your next phase. And, like anything, like when you're playing football, it's all consuming. There's literally nothing else, in some ways. When you go out to training, you don't know what's happening in the world.
Wow.
I mean, it's all encompassing. And I feel like in some ways right now with golf, a little bit of that. As a broadcaster, I love it. I enjoy it. But I think that was never a part of the, mindset when you're playing football. I mean, that would be silly to say that you were thinking of something like that. But I do believe that as soon as you're done and you start the next thing, I mean, you do want to be good at what you're doing. I mean, I know it's tough for Ben and Skin to have a great radio show, but they somehow do it, and they make it incredible. So that's the goal. I mean, I'm done playing. I get back into broadcasting. I'm in broadcasting. I'm in golf. It's like, hey, if we're going to do this, let's not be average. Let's try and be really good at this, and that's the next mindset you do. So whatever it is you're trying to do, I mean, for me, it'd be hard just to sit back and be like, oh, I'm pretty good. I'm okay. Yeah, that's not really my mental makeup, I guess.
I don't mean this to sound condescending or obtuse or whatever, but was broadcasting easier than you thought it would be?
No. It's not a secret, but before I ever went on air, I think one area that was a little shocking was just, okay, we'll do a game, and then you'll get out there because we think you're pretty good. But, I talked to CBS, and I was like, well, I'm not just going to randomly go out on air without knowing who I am or what I'm doing. So I got to give Jim Rickoff, Jim Nance, CBS team credit because I did a lot of games. I mean, I literally practiced as if I did a full season, you could argue. It's not 2 seasons worth of games. And then on my own at home and just taped it and evaluated it. I mean, just between us and every other listener listening right now.
Right.
I think what I found really quickly when I did the practice games, my very first time I did a game, I just talked normal, and I listened back, and it sounded like, I was the teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It was like, Bueller, Bueller. I mean, it was so boring. I was like, gosh, I can't even stand listening to myself. It's always hard to listen to yourself. You always critique everything.
Hey, Tony Romo just leveled out the truth about the whole situation, whereas Peyton Manning said all he thought about and all he would ever think about was football while he was playing football, and just dismissed whatever the article was about, Tony Romo versus Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning said that he just thought about football while Tony Romo was thinking about broadcasting, and he said that all that he wanted to ever be was a football player from Peyton Manning's perspective, and Tony Romo was thinking about other things. Now, I'm just going to be real with you guys. I can't sugarcoat none of this stuff. Tony Romo, let's be real about it. I love me some Tony Romo, but at the end of the day, if you look at it, we know that Tony Romo loved golf as well. And he tried to compete in these sorts of things, playing golf while he was playing football. And Peyton Manning, football is all he knows, and football is all that he was able to do. And I didn't think that it was a shade that Peyton Manning was trying to throw out there, but it came off as shade. And the reality of it is that, Tony Romo is multiple. He got multiple skill set. The guy can play basketball, the guy can play golf, and he can play football. So for people out there who say, well, he should have only been thinking about football, that's crass for them to say that, because a lot of times when you grow up playing multiple sports, you just know how to do multiple sports. It's just the reality of it. I talk football all the time, but growing up, I played basketball every day of my life. I play basketball every day, Cowboy Nation, but my passion is football. So, and then it just goes back and forth, guys. It's one of those things where we shouldn't look too much into this. Peyton Manning, he's a Hall of Famer. Peyton Manning got 2 Super Bowl rings. One can argue that he had one hell of a coach his first year with first time he made it to the Super Bowl with that coach, Tony Dungy, and then the second time he made it to the Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos with one hell of a defense, man. They had defensive guys flying everywhere, and these sorts of things. So, hey, it is what it is at this point. Appreciate the donation to help grow the nation. Really, thank you, man, Don, for making that donation, man. Thank you for the support and your love and adulations towards this channel and your support overall. Cowboy Nation, I'm going to try to find a clip within this long interview, but you can find also this interview on their podcast on 105.3 The Fan. Just go to radio.com if needed, or you can go to 105.3thefan.radio.com, and you will see where you can listen to the radio excerpt from there.
Usually that are side
out towards the sideline, the left foot's pointing out towards the other side.
Okay, here we go. Here goes some meat and potatoes.
And then I would eventually move down. So, it's interesting. As long as the stuff up top with the football, the shoulder movement, some of those things are coming, then that's going to be a really good thing then with the lower body doing stuff correctly.
Okay, so Tony, let me tell you why I really like hearing that. Because our own Kevin Turner, KT Fun Tweets, pointed out very early on with Dak, and I was late coming to the party, that Dak almost has duck feet, right? They kind of point out. Like, how would you describe that, KT?
Yeah, I would say the right foot's pointing out towards the sideline, the left foot's pointing out towards the other sideline.
So, I had this inherent worry of, will his footwork be a problem? But I hear you saying that the throwing motion can actually dictate the footwork. And so, to me, that almost gives me confidence that he will get wherever he needs to be mechanically, knowing that it starts up top. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think Dak's going to work hard. I mean, he's a hard worker.
True.
He's got good coaches around him.
True.
John Kitten has come from a very good background. He threw a very good football. I mean, these guys, they study and stuff. It's just some of the stuff I would talk about would bore you guys. I'll tell you that because I got so –
Come on, Tony, give us the information.
I just wanted to know why for every little detail. The arm angle would be here, why your feet would be here, why, you would angle, like you said, the feet would be angled out at 45 instead of 30 or 90. I mean, all this stuff. And I think each guy has his own natural stroke. Some are longer, some are shorter. The idea is to make the longer shorter,
right?
And some of the shorter keep that the same if they have enough power. If they don't have power, how are you going to create it? Well, there's only so many ways. So, as long as he has, throwing the ball with velocity and spin, then I think I wouldn't mess with it too much.
So you've taught us a lot about tendencies in the NFL and the chess match between coordinators and how important that is and how predictability can be a very difficult thing. And obviously the Cowboys are going to go through a change at the offensive coordinator spot with Kellen Moore getting an opportunity. And so if nothing else, it's going to be way harder to predict what they're doing compared to years past because there's been a change. How significant is that change, in your opinion, for the Cowboys offense to have a new offensive coordinator?
Yes, I want to hear this.
Well, it's significant. And the significance mostly for me, in some ways, I always would argue, there's certain things that I would do differently than I think there's probably one or two teams who do this. I just don't think they've talked about it. But I think that the NFL, there's so much data and stuff on film and tape that if you get a history going against a coordinator or against a coach and a system, you just understand who these people are. Human beings are still calling these plays. They're still making decisions. And so the more you know that, and the more data you have on them, you can actually predict easier what's coming. So I've always felt like change is a good thing just for change's sake, even if it's bad change. After a certain point, just to give your teams in your division, if they don't really have any data on how this guy calls a game, even if the system's the exact same, literally if they didn't change the play, it would still throw off teams in the division or teams who have played against them or coordinators, defensive coordinators, strictly based on the fact that this guy they've never gone against, so they don't know under the gun. You see a guy who, for defensive coordinators, this guy's coming with an all-out blitz if the game's on the line. This other guy, he's going to drop 8 guys and try and throw your timing off. Well, certain people, that's just who they are. That's their mental makeup. Mm-hmm. And so just having a change is going to benefit you early. Now, as the season progresses, now there's tape, now there's data, there's analysis. I mean, now you have everything as far as the numbers on third down, red zone, the key plays. Then that's when you'll find out really how good, that actual play call is.
So, Tony, we know that you have a
Hey, let me just give you guys my thoughts on this. That's some deep stuff by Tony Romo to come out and say, hey, change for even if it's bad is good, because now teams don't know how to key on certain players. Now teams don't know what you're going to do. It's like the element of surprise, right? Peekaboo, you know what I mean? I play that game with my daughter all the time. Peekaboo, and she'd be like, my thing is he speaks a valid point, because if you look at 2016, a lot of teams were saying like this offense is so bland, but we just don't know how to stop Ezekiel Elliott. We don't know how to shut down Dak Prescott. We need more tape. We need more film on Dak Prescott. We need to figure out what to take away, because he's looking like he can actually walk on the water. You know what I mean? And this young team is beating all you know what. But then the following years to come, then we start to see these other teams starting to be ready to control and putting 8 and 9 men in the box. And then they realize that you can't play a zone defense against Dak Prescott, because he will actually pick you apart. But you can play man-to-man and force him to throw those deep, long third routes or even the deep slants or the deep posts routes out there, opposed to him just dropping back into the flats or dropping back into the zone defense, because he pick you apart. Dak Prescott would pick you apart in zone defenses. That's why when you see Ezekiel Elliott off the team or what have you, you see more passing production from Dak Prescott. It's crazy, because teams don't put 8 and 9 men in the box when Ezekiel Elliott's not on the field. You see what I'm saying? So it's always something, man. The element of surprise is always an amazing thing, and that's what Tony Romo was putting out there to the universe, of saying why Kellen Moore is just going to be better for this team for the first 6 or 7 games, and then they still going to have to reinvent themselves, right? All right, let's see if I can finish up. We got about 4 more minutes left before my time expires. So let's go.
Passionate football love affair with Bill Belichick, as a lot of people do. Do you think he is literally head and shoulders above all these other organizations, or is it a lot closer than that?
I wouldn't say organizations, but from a football mind standpoint, I really don't know that I've met anybody really that close. I mean, he's rare. And
right, true. That'd be a better.
A lot of times I'll ask coaches and other people certain questions that I know are probably a little bit difficult, but it kind of shows me real quick whether or not they have answers, or if it's just, more simple without getting into exact detail there. But Bill Belichick, he's not going to go into a game feeling like we don't have answers. And when I say that, I mean, everyone says he's going to take away what you do best. They think he just double teams the best player. I'm like, no, you have to understand. He's taking away the inside run while taking away the inside, or while he's taking away the inside receiver, the slot receiver, or, Antonio Brown or someone. It's like they know he's going to take away Antonio Brown, but he takes away multiple things, and he does it differently the next time he plays you from different looks. And what he did in the Super Bowl was really one of the great, him and Brian Flores, one of the great defensive performances I've ever seen in football, and really in the AFC title game. He went to Kansas City, and in that first half, Kansas City couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, these two offenses were, you saw what happened when the Rams played the Cowboys. These were very good offensive units and with very good systems. But what he did was really, really impressive. And when I'm around him, I learn. And that's really a joy when you can
what are you trying to say? You didn't learn anything
really
from Jason
learn
Garrett?
something more about football with people around. When you have people that can teach you the game after you've been studying it for 15, 20 years, that's a joy.
So,
and I honestly learn every time I'm around him. And he's really, really special.
Why is he special? In other words, there's a bunch of guys that work in the league that's all they do, and there's smart guys. There's all kinds of guys with abilities that are dedicated to this,
True.
But something makes him different. What is it?
He got them tapes.
Well, to me, there's a book called Outliers. They call 10,000-hour rules to be elite. So it's like the 10,000 hours makes you an elite, whatever it is. You want to be a violinist? Great. You want to be a football player? Good. So that you have to perfect your craft, basically, I say. Well, somebody like Belichick, the rarity that I see is that he believes in – there's a million things we could talk about, okay? But just the core stuff that I see is that he genuinely is not scared to go outside the box. True. And I find in the NFL very few teams vary from what they do. So what he does then is he drafts people that he believes can adapt from week to week and really understand, okay, you were the B gap on this play call last year. That's the gap you had to fit, linebacker.
Fit the B gap.
Now next week, you're the C gap. Wait, that's the same look, the same call.
Right.
I know. Can you do that? Well, you better have smart people to be able to do it. This is why they constantly move on from people fast. It's like he just needs people to do the stuff that he's able to come up with from week to week. And he's basically attacking what you're doing, whereas I find most defenses do what they do, and that works too. There's a lot of good defenses that play hard, but very few of them attack the coordinator, attack the quarterback and how he thinks. And the reason is because it's just really hard to get these players not to bust a play, not to have a situation where a guy gives up a touchdown just because he forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's over with, guys. I really appreciate each and every last one of you all. You guys can listen to the whole entire interview on 105.3 thefan.radio.com, and that way you can listen to the entire interview of Tony Romo and Ben and Skin. I really appreciate you all. Just to piggyback off what he said, just think about it. Bill Belichick drafts guys that can play B gap, and then all of a sudden next week I want you to play C. Then the following weeks I want you to jump back to B on the defensive side. That's what we call a system. Bill Belichick was able to make Matthew Castle 11-5 quarterback. System. So I'm not trying to discount what Tom Brady is able to do, but it seems like a perfect system down there that's going over there in New England Patriots world, and I believe that Bill Belichick, he's very seasonal enough, and he's complex enough to always make those changes too. So he listened, and that's what Bill Belichick do out there. He's a crafty guy, just born into football. All he thinks about is, trust me, is football, and he is a very thorough coach. I still think that just because he made him burn up some of them tapes didn't mean that he didn't make copies. So he probably still have copies of tapes and films out there of other teams and their organization and what they do best and all these sorts of things. But it is what it is. What I took away from that as well is that Tony Romo said he's learning something. He learns something every minute, every second that he's with Bill Belichick. Were you learning anything from Jason Garrett? That's enough of me picking on Coach Red, man. And then on top of that, as far as throwing mechanics, he talked a little bit for those who just joined in. It's more important for Dak Prescott to get his throwing mechanics with his arm. Where his arm goes, his legs and feet will follow, and those things. Just try to go back into the interview and listen to it several times so you guys can, really get a full grasp of what Tony Romo was saying. Cowboy Nation, that's all the time that I have for today. I really appreciate and thank you all for yours. Thank those who made the donation to help grow the nation. Shout out to Tom Jasper, Robbie. Shout out to Sheila Neal. Law, I see you up in there. Law Campbell Sr., I see you, man. Don Johnson, really appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Antoine Jones, thank you. Golden Heart City, number 2, not number 1, not number 3, number 2. Shout out to you. Mr. Fluffy Steel, appreciate